The fluorescent lights of the office hummed overhead as I stared at my computer screen, watching the cursor blink mockingly at me. Another Friday evening, another weekend stretching ahead with nothing but Netflix and takeout to fill the void. At 28, I'd somehow become the poster child for comfortable loneliness. Hey Marcus. I looked up to see Derek leaning against my cubicle wall, his signature easy grin plastered across his face. Derek was everything I wasn't: confident, athletic, effortlessly charismatic. We'd been working together for almost 2 years at the marketing firm, and somehow, against all odds, we'd become friends. Real friends, not just office acquaintances who made small talk by the water cooler. "What's up?" I asked, minimizing the spreadsheet I'd been pretending to work on. "So, you remember that camping trip I mentioned, the one my college buddies do every year?" I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "Well, Jake had to bail last minute. His wife's going into labor early and we've got an extra spot. Thought you might want to come along, get out of the city for a weekend, breathe some actual air instead of bus exhaust." My immediate instinct was to say no. Camping with a group of Derek's college friends, all undoubtedly straight, athletic guys who probably played intramural sports and talked about fantasy football, sounded like my personal version of hell. I was the gay guy who preferred art house films to action movies, who'd rather spend a Saturday at a museum than watching the game. But Derek was looking at me with such genuine enthusiasm, and the alternative was another lonely weekend. "I don't know, man, I'm not exactly the outdoorsy type," I hedged. "Come on, it'll be fun. We hike up to this amazing spot by the lake, set up camp, cook over the fire, tell stories. Plus, you'll love these guys, well, most of them," he laughed. "And honestly, I could use someone there who can actually hold a conversation about something other than sports statistics." There was something in his voice, a note of sincerity that caught me off guard. Maybe Derek was as tired of performing his role as I was of mine. "When is it?" "Next weekend, Friday after work through Sunday. I can drive us both. I've got all the camping gear you'd need." I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to decline politely and maintain my comfortable bubble. But there was this other part, the part that was tired of always playing it safe, that was curious about this other side of Derek's life. "Okay," I heard myself say, "yeah, let's do it." Derek's face lit up. "Seriously, that's awesome, man, you won't regret it." As he walked away, already pulling out his phone to text the group, I wondered if I'd just made a terrible mistake. The following Friday, I found myself squeezed into Derek's truck, my borrowed backpack taking up most of the space behind the seat. The city gradually gave way to suburbs, then to rolling hills dotted with farms and forests. Derek had his playlist going, a surprising mix of indie rock and old country that I actually didn't hate. "So tell me about these guys," I said as we merged onto the highway. "Well, there's Connor, he's the organizer, total type A personality, works in finance now, still acts like he's our raw from freshman year," Derek grinned. "Then there's Mike, he's the quiet one, computer programmer, barely talks but when he does it's usually hilarious. And then there's Ethan." Something in the way Derek said that last name made me look over at him. His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. He's been my best friend since we were 18, roomed together all 4 years of college. He's the one who actually started this camping tradition." "What's he like?" Derek was quiet for a moment, eyes on the road. "He's hard to describe. Intense, I guess, really passionate about things. He's a high school English teacher now, spends his summers traveling or reading or, I don't know, contemplating the meaning of existence." He laughed, but there was an odd fondness in it. "You'll either love him or find him pretentious as hell. There's usually no in-between." I filed that information away, trying to imagine what kind of person could inspire that kind of description from the usually straightforward Derek. We drove for another 2 hours, the conversation flowing easily between comfortable silences. This was what I liked about Derek. He didn't need to fill every moment with noise. He was secure enough in himself to just exist alongside someone else. Finally, we turned off onto a dirt road that wound through thick forest. The truck bounced over ruts and rocks and I gripped the door handle, suddenly very aware of how far we were from civilization. "Almost there," Derek said, navigating a particularly sharp turn. The trees opened up into a clearing where 2 other vehicles were already parked, a Jeep and a beat-up Subaru. Derek parked next to them and killed the engine. In the sudden silence, I could hear birds calling and wind rustling through the pines. "You ready?" Derek asked, and I couldn't quite read the expression on his face. "As I'll ever be." We climbed out and I stretched, grateful to be out of the cramped cab. The air was incredible, clean and sharp, scented with pine and earth. I took a deep breath, feeling something in my chest loosen slightly. "Derek." A tall, sandy-haired guy emerged from the trail, arms spread wide. This had to be Connor. He had that clean-cut, all-American look, polo shirt tucked into cargo shorts, expensive hiking boots that looked fresh out of the box. Derek accepted the bro hug with a laugh. "Connor, this is Marcus, Connor." Connor's handshake was firm, his smile genuine if a bit practiced. "Great to meet you, man. Derek's told us a lot about you, glad you could make it." Before I could respond, another figure appeared on the trail. This one was shorter, stockier, wearing a faded t-shirt and regular sneakers. Mike, presumably. "Hey," he said with a small wave. "We started setting up camp already. Ethan's being anal about the fire pit placement." "Of course he is," Derek said with a laugh. We grabbed our gear and followed Connor and Mike down the trail. It was only about a 10-minute hike, but it was enough to make me aware of exactly how out of shape I was. I tried not to wheeze too obviously. The campsite was perfect in that way that made me understand why people romanticized this kind of thing. A clearing surrounded by towering pines with a small stream running along one edge. The lake was visible through the trees, its surface reflecting the late afternoon sun like hammered gold. And standing in the middle of it all, crouched next to a carefully arranged circle of stones, was Ethan. I don't know what I'd been expecting based on Derek's description, but it wasn't this. Ethan was tall, probably 6'2", with dark, slightly too long hair that fell across his forehead. He wore worn jeans and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing surprisingly muscular forearms. But it was his face that caught me, strong features, serious dark eyes, a mouth that looked like it didn't smile easily but would be devastating when it did. He looked up as we approached, and for a moment our eyes met. I felt something crackle in the air between us like static electricity before a storm. "You must be Marcus," he said, straightening up. His voice was deeper than I expected, with a rough edge to it. "Derek's mentioned you." "Has he?" I managed, taking the hand Ethan offered. His grip was firm, his hand calloused and warm. He held my gaze for a beat longer than was entirely comfortable, and I found myself looking away first. "Only good things," Ethan said, and I couldn't tell if he was being genuine or sarcastic. "Ethan's been building that fire pit for an hour," Connor said with a laugh. "Apparently the feng shui wasn't right. I want it positioned so everyone can sit around it comfortably and we're not breathing smoke all night," Ethan said without looking at Connor. "Is that such a crime?" "No, man, it's very you," Derek said, dropping his pack. "Where should Marcus and I set up?" The next hour was spent setting up tents and organizing gear. I was basically useless, having never done this before, but Derek patiently walked me through it. I was hyper-aware of Ethan moving around the campsite, efficient and capable, occasionally offering curt instructions. I kept stealing glances at him, trying to figure him out. There was something magnetic about him, the way he moved through space like he owned it. He'd catch me looking sometimes, and that strange electricity would spark again before I quickly looked away. By the time camp was fully set up, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Connor had started working on dinner, some kind of camping stew that smelled surprisingly good. We all settled around the now completed fire pit, and Ethan finally got the fire going with an efficiency that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times. "So Marcus," Connor said as he stirred the pot, "Derek tells us you work in marketing together." "Yeah, I'm in the creative department, mostly handle campaign design and copy." "He's being modest," Derek interjected. "He won 2 industry awards last year." I felt myself flush. It was a team effort. "He's also terrible at taking compliments," Derek added with a grin. "What about you, Ethan?" I asked, wanting to shift attention away from myself. "Derek mentioned you teach high school English." Ethan looked up from the fire, the flames casting strange shadows across his face. "Yeah, junior and senior level, AP Literature and Creative Writing." "That's cool, do you enjoy it?" He was quiet for a moment, considering the question with more seriousness than it probably deserved. Most days, there's something, I don't know, sacred, I guess, about that moment when a kid really connects with a piece of literature. When they realize that someone who died 200 years ago understood exactly what they're feeling. The way he said it with such quiet intensity made something flip in my stomach. Ethan's kids love him, Mike said. I've seen some of the notes they write him at the end of the year, it's pretty touching. They're good kids, Ethan said simply, looking back at the fire. We ate dinner as darkness fell completely, the stars emerging overhead in a spectacular display you never saw in the city. The conversation flowed easily, old college stories, updates on people's lives, gentle ribbing between friends who'd known each other for over a decade. I found myself relaxing, laughing at Mike's deadpan humor and Connor's animated storytelling. Derek had been right, these were good guys, and through it all I was aware of Ethan across the fire, mostly quiet but occasionally offering a comment that was inevitably thoughtful or unexpectedly funny. A few times I'd look up to find him already watching me and that spark would flare again. I couldn't read the expression in his eyes. Later that night, after the food was cleaned up and Connor had broken out the whiskey, we all sat around the fire nursing plastic cups and watching the flames dance. Remember that time sophomore year when Ethan convinced us all to sleep outside during that meteor shower? Derek said, a little loose from the alcohol. And it ended up raining. I still maintain that was worth it, Ethan said. We saw at least 30 shooting stars before the clouds rolled in. We also all got mild hypothermia, Connor pointed out. Builds character, Ethan replied deadpan. Marcus, any good camping stories? Mike asked. I laughed. This is actually my first time camping, like ever. There was a moment of surprised silence. Seriously, Connor asked, how have you made it to, how old are you? 28. How have you made it to 28 without ever camping? I shrugged, city kid, my idea of roughing it is a hotel without room service. Well, you picked a good group to pop your camping cherry with, Derek said with a grin. That's what all the guys say, I replied without thinking, then immediately froze as I realized what I'd just implied. There was a beat of silence, then Mike burst out laughing. Okay, I like him. I looked at Derek nervously, but he was grinning. See, I told you guys he was funny. I relaxed slightly, taking another sip of whiskey. This was the eternal calculation, how much of myself to reveal, how much to keep hidden. I'd been out since college, but I'd also learned that some spaces weren't always welcoming, no matter how progressive people claimed to be. So you're gay? Connor asked, not unkindly. Yeah, I said, trying to sound casual about it. Cool, my sister's gay, she and her wife have the cutest kid. Connor pulled out his phone. Want to see pictures? And just like that, the moment passed. We looked at photos of Connor's niece, then somehow got into a debate about whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie. The whiskey made everything warm and easy, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the company. Ethan remained mostly quiet, occasionally interjecting with a comment but largely just watching the fire, and I sometimes felt watching me. Around midnight, Connor and Mike declared they were turning in. Lightweights, Derek said affectionately as they stumbled toward their tent. Some of us have to drive home Sunday, Connor called back. Then it was just the three of us, me, Derek, and Ethan. The fire had burned down to glowing embers and the forest around us was alive with night sounds. I should probably turn in too, Derek said, stifling a yawn. You guys good? Yeah man, thanks for inviting me, I said. Of course, Derek stood stretched, then headed toward our tent. Which left me alone with Ethan. The silence stretched between us, not quite comfortable but not hostile either. I was acutely aware of how close he was, just on the other side of the fire pit. So, Ethan said finally, what did you think Derek told us about you? I looked up, surprised by the directness of the question. I don't know, work stuff probably, that I'm pretty quiet, keep to myself. He said you were brilliant, that you see things other people miss, that you make him think about things differently. Ethan paused. He admires you a lot. I didn't know what to say to that. Derek's a good friend. He is. Ethan was quiet for a moment. He also said you were lonely, that you always seem like you're on the outside looking in, even when you're right there in the middle of things. The observation hit too close to home and I felt suddenly defensive. He said all that. Not in those words exactly, but I've known Derek for 10 years. I can read between the lines. Ethan leaned forward, his face emerging from shadow. He worries about you. He doesn't need to. Probably not, but he does anyway. That's who he is. I looked at Ethan properly then, trying to understand why he was telling me this. His expression was unreadable in the dim light. What about you? I asked. Are you lonely? It was a bold question made possible by whiskey and darkness. Ethan's eyes widened slightly as if I'd surprised him. Yes, he said finally, but I'm working on it. How's that going? A smile ghosted across his face, the first real one I'd seen from him. It was, as I'd suspected, devastating. Not great, if I'm being honest. We looked at each other across the dying fire, and I felt that spark again, stronger this time. There was something happening here, something I couldn't quite name. I started, gesturing vaguely toward the tent. Yeah, Ethan said, but neither of us moved. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, then Ethan stood abruptly. Good night, Marcus. Good night. I watched him walk to his tent. He'd set up a solo one at the edge of the clearing and disappear inside. Then I made my way to the tent I was sharing with Derek, my mind spinning. Derek was already asleep, snoring softly in his sleeping bag. I changed quietly and crawled into my own bag, staring up at the tent ceiling. What the hell was happening? I woke to the sound of birds and the smell of coffee. For a moment I was disoriented, forgetting where I was. Then it all came rushing back, the camping trip, the fire, Ethan's dark eyes across the flames. I unzipped the tent to find the campsite already active. Connor was making breakfast on a portable stove, Mike was reading a book on a folding chair, and Derek was doing some kind of stretching routine that looked vaguely yoga-inspired. Morning sunshine, Derek called. Coffee's ready. I gratefully accepted a cup, black and strong. What time is it? About 7, we're thinking of hiking up to the waterfall this morning. You in? Before I could answer, Ethan emerged from his tent. He looked annoyingly good for someone who'd been sleeping on the ground, his hair tousled, his flannel shirt unbuttoned over a white t-shirt. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, heading for the coffee. Yeah, I'm in, I said, turning back to Derek. The hike to the waterfall was beautiful but challenging. The trail wound upward through dense forest, occasionally opening up to reveal stunning views of the valley below. I quickly fell to the back of the group, my city lungs protesting the exertion. You okay? I looked up to find Ethan had dropped back to walk beside me. The others were ahead, Connor still telling some animated story that had Derek and Mike laughing. Just out of shape, I admitted. Take your time, it's not a race. Ethan adjusted his pace to match mine. First time in nature like this. Pretty much, I mean, I've been to parks but nothing like this. What do you think? I looked around at the towering trees, the dappled sunlight, the absolute vastness of it all. It's overwhelming. In a good way. Ethan nodded. I know what you mean. It puts things in perspective. All the stuff we worry about in our daily lives, deadlines, bills, what people think of us, it all seems so small out here. We walked in silence for a while. It was strange. With anyone else, I might have felt the need to fill the quiet with conversation, but with Ethan, the silence felt natural. Can I ask you something? Ethan said eventually. Sure. Last night when you made that joke about camping virginity and everyone realized you were gay, you tensed up, like you were waiting for something bad to happen. I considered denying it, then decided there was no point. Old habit, you never know how people are going to react. Has Derek ever given you reason to worry? No, Derek's been great, but Derek's also, he's not everyone. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry you've had experiences that made you feel like you have to hide. The simple empathy in his voice caught me off guard. Thanks. We crested a hill and suddenly the waterfall was before us. A stunning cascade of white water tumbling over rocks into a crystal-clear pool below. The others were already there, Connor immediately stripping off his shirt to reveal a torso that suggested he spent a lot of time at the gym. Who's swimming? He called out. The water's probably freezing, Mike pointed out. Don't be a coward. Derek was already pulling off his shirt. Come on, it'll be refreshing. I watched as the three of them stripped down to their boxers and waded into the pool, whooping at the cold. Ethan stayed back with me, both of us sitting on sun-warmed rocks. Not swimming, I asked. I prefer to retain feeling in my extremities, he said dryly. I laughed, watching the others splash around like kids. They're having fun. They're idiots, Ethan said, but there was affection in his voice. But yeah, they are. We sat there watching them, the sound of the waterfall filling the air. I was hyper-aware of Ethan next to me, the warmth of his body in the cool air, the way his shirt had ridden up slightly to reveal a strip of skin at his waist. Marcus. I looked up to find him watching me with that intense gaze again. Yes. I'm glad you came this weekend. It was a simple statement, but the way he said it made my heart rate pick up. Me too. Something passed between us then, something unspoken but undeniable. Ethan opened his mouth like he was going to say something else, then seemed to think better of it, looking away. Down in the pool, Derek was trying to dunk Connor, who was fighting back with surprising ferocity. Mike was floating on his back, looking peaceful. So what's the story with you? I asked, needing to break the tension. Derek said you're intense and passionate and hard to describe. Ethan snorted. That's one way to put it. I think disaster and overthinks everything would also be accurate. Join the club. He looked at me, a small smile playing at his lips. Yeah. Oh yeah, I can overthink ordering coffee. It's a special talent. What do you overthink about? Everything, whether people actually like me or are just being polite, whether I'm good enough at my job, whether I'm wasting my life in a city I don't really love, doing work that doesn't really matter. I paused, surprised at my own honesty. The usual existential dread. That doesn't sound usual, that sounds hard. Says the high school English teacher who contemplates the meaning of existence. Ethan laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his whole face. Fair point, maybe we're both disasters. Probably. We fell into comfortable silence again, and I realized this was the most relaxed I'd felt in months, maybe years. There was something about Ethan that made me feel like I could be honest, like I didn't have to perform or pretend. Eventually, the others emerged from the water, teeth chattering, declaring it simultaneously the best and worst decision they'd made all day. We hiked back to camp, and I found myself walking next to Ethan again, our hands occasionally brushing as we navigated the narrow trail. Each touch felt electric. Back at camp, we made lunch, sandwiches and chips, simple and perfect. The afternoon stretched lazy and warm, and we all dozed in various spots around the campsite, the hiking having worn us out. I woke to find most of the others still asleep. Ethan was awake, sitting by the stream with a book. I got up quietly and walked over. What are you reading? He held up the book. Ocean Viewings on Earth were briefly gorgeous. Any good? Beautiful, heartbreaking. Want to join me? I sat down next to him on the bank, our shoulders almost touching. The stream burbled past and the forest hummed with insect life. Read me something, I said impulsively. Ethan looked at me, something unreadable in his expression, then flipped to a marked page. His voice when he read was different, softer, more vulnerable. I am writing to reach you, even if each word I put down is one word further from where you are. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. Ethan closed the book slowly. That's beautiful, I said quietly. Yeah, he was looking at the water, not at me. It's about the distance between people, how we try to bridge it with words, with stories, with anything we can find, but sometimes the distance is just there. Is that how you feel, distant from people? Sometimes, most of the time, if I'm honest. He paused. Derek told you I'm intense. What he didn't tell you is that it scares people off. I care too much, too fast. I ask too many questions. I want to skip past the small talk and get to the real stuff, and that makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. Ethan looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt like he was seeing right through every defense I'd ever built. Doesn't it? No, I said truthfully. I think I'm tired of small talk. I think I'm tired of pretending to be less than I am so other people feel comfortable. Is that what you do at work with Derek? Not with Derek, he's one of the few people who gets the real me, but yeah, usually, it's easier that way. Easier, Ethan repeated, but not better. No, not better. We sat there, the confession hanging between us. I could hear the others starting to wake up back at camp, but it felt like we were in our own bubble, separate from everything else. Marcus, Ethan said, and his voice had a quality I couldn't quite identify. I need to tell you something. My heart started pounding. Okay. He took a breath, his hands clenching on the book. I'm Ethan, Marcus, Derek's voice called from the campsite. We're thinking about heading down to the lake for a swim before dinner. The moment shattered, Ethan closed his eyes briefly, frustration flickering across his face. Coming, I called back, even though every part of me wanted to stay right here and hear what Ethan was going to say. We walked back to camp together, the unfinished conversation sitting heavy between us. The lake was even more beautiful than I'd realized, clear and cold, surrounded by pine trees that seemed to touch the sky. The others were already in the water by the time Ethan and I arrived, having changed into swim trunks back at camp. I'd been self-conscious about my body, too skinny, too pale, the body of someone who spent too much time behind a desk. But when I pulled off my shirt, I caught Ethan looking, his eyes tracking across my skin before he quickly looked away. The water was cold enough to steal my breath. I waded in slowly while the others dove and splashed around me. When I was waist-deep, I felt a presence beside me. Ethan. Without his shirt, I could see he was more muscular than I'd realized, his shoulders broad, his stomach flat. There was a tattoo on his ribs, text in what looked like Latin. What does it say? I asked, nodding at the tattoo. Amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. Virgil. He looked surprised. You know Virgil. I took Latin in high school, I was a massive nerd. I splashed water at him and he laughed, retaliating. Soon we were in a full water fight and the others joined in, and for a while it was just pure, simple fun, the kind I hadn't experienced in years. But eventually, the group split up, Connor and Mike floating on their backs further out, Derek swimming laps like he was training for something. Ethan and I ended up treading water near the shore, far enough from the others to talk privately. What were you going to tell me? I asked, by the stream. Ethan's expression turned serious. He looked like he was weighing something, deciding. I was going to tell you that I haven't been entirely honest with everyone. My stomach flipped. About what? He looked toward the others, making sure they were out of earshot. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Derek's been my best friend for 10 years, these guys Connor. Mike, they've been my friends almost as long, and they don't know that I'm not, that I'm. He trailed off and suddenly I understood. They don't know you're gay, I finished quietly. Bisexual, he corrected, at least I think so, I'm still figuring it out. He let out a shaky breath. You're the first person I've said that out loud to. The weight of that confession settled over us. I understood now, the intensity, the way he'd been looking at me, the electricity I'd felt between us. How long have you known? I asked gently. Part of me has always known, I think, but I'm good at denial, good at convincing myself that the way I felt about certain guys was just admiration or friendship or whatever. He ran a hand through his wet hair. But lately it's been getting harder to pretend. And then Derek said he was bringing you and he showed me your picture and I. You what? He looked at me and there was such vulnerability in his eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about you, all week. I kept telling myself I was just curious, just interested in meeting Derek's friend, but then you got here and I looked at you and I knew. Knew what? That I was in trouble. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. Ethan. I know this is a lot, I know you probably didn't sign up for being someone's gay awakening or whatever this is. And if you want me to back off, I will, I needed you to know, because this feeling, it's not going away, if anything, it's getting stronger. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was thrilled, this beautiful, intense, complicated man was attracted to me, but another part was terrified. This wasn't just a casual hookup. This was someone's whole identity shifting, and the weight of that responsibility was enormous. I don't know what to say, I admitted. You don't have to say anything, I just needed you to know where I'm at, what I'm feeling. He paused. How I feel when I look at you. How do you feel? He moved closer in the water, close enough that I could see the droplets on his eyelashes, the way his lips were slightly parted. Like I'm drowning and breathing for the first time all at once. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, made something in me crack open. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his arm, just a brief contact, but he sucked in a breath like I'd electrocuted him. Hey guys, Derek's voice shattered the moment. We're heading back, getting cold. Ethan and I broke apart, the spell broken. We swam back to shore in silence, and I could feel the weight of everything unsaid between us. Dinner that night was quieter than the previous evening. Or maybe it just felt that way because I was hyper-aware of Ethan across the fire, of every glance, every movement. Derek noticed. You okay, man? You're quiet. Just tired from all the swimming, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Connor was telling some story about work and Mike was interjecting with sarcastic comments and Derek was laughing, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying Ethan's confession, the look in his eyes, the way he'd said he was in trouble. After dinner, Connor suggested a night hike to a nearby viewpoint where you could see the stars without the fire's light interfering. Everyone agreed, grabbing flashlights and heading out. The trail was dark and slightly treacherous, requiring focus to navigate. Ethan and I ended up at the back of the group again, our flashlight beams dancing across the path. Are you okay? He asked quietly, with what I told you. I'm processing, I said honestly. It's not that I'm not interested, Ethan, it's that this is big. You coming out, figuring yourself out, that's a huge deal, and I don't want to be the reason you make a decision you're not ready for. What if you're the reason I'm finally ready to be honest with myself? I stopped walking, turning to face him. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you just met. I know, I'm sorry, I told you I'm intense. You did warn me, I said with a small smile. We stood there on the dark trail, our flashlights pointed at the ground, creating a small circle of light around us. I'm not asking you to be anything you're not comfortable with, Ethan said. I'm not asking you to be my guide through this or to have all the answers. I'm drawn to you, Marcus, in a way I've never been drawn to anyone, and I thought you should know. Before I could respond, we heard Derek calling back, You guys okay back there? Yeah, I called, just taking our time. We continued walking, and when Ethan's hand brushed mine in the darkness, I let my fingers curl briefly around his before letting go. The viewpoint was spectacular. The sky was absolutely packed with stars, more than I'd ever seen. We all lay on our backs on the warm rock, staring up at the vast universe. It makes you feel small, doesn't it? Mike said quietly. In a good way, though, Derek added, like your problems are small too. I turned my head slightly and found Ethan looking at me instead of the stars. In the darkness, I could barely make out his expression, but I could feel the intensity of his gaze. What are you thinking about? I whispered. That I've spent so much time looking at the sky, trying to find meaning in something vast and distant, when maybe what I've been looking for has been right here, in moments like this, with people who matter. It was such an Ethan thing to say, poetic and intense and completely sincere. I felt my chest tighten. You guys having a moment over there, Connor called out, his tone teasing. Just philosophizing, Ethan replied easily. You should try it sometime. I'll pass, my brain hurts enough from work. We lay there for another 30 minutes, occasionally identifying constellations, mostly Ethan, who seemed to know an absurd amount about astronomy, before hiking back to camp. The others went straight to their tents, exhausted from the long day, but Ethan lingered by the dying fire. I knew I should go to bed, knew that staying up with him was playing with fire, metaphorically speaking, but I couldn't make myself walk away. Want company? I asked. Always, he said simply. We sat together in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the forest. An owl hooted somewhere in the distance. The stream gurgled softly. Tell me about your life, Ethan said eventually. Your real life, not the version you show at work. I considered the question, trying to figure out where to start. It's pretty boring, honestly. I wake up, go to work, come home, order food, watch something mindless on TV, go to bed. Weekends I might go to a museum or a movie by myself. Sometimes I'll meet up with Derek for drinks, but that's about it. No dating. Occasional apps, but nothing serious. I'm good at first dates and terrible at second ones. I think I sabotage things before they can get real. Why? Because real means vulnerable, and vulnerable means the possibility of getting hurt. I paused. I know I should probably talk to a therapist about it. Maybe you just haven't met someone who makes you want to take that risk. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something personal?
Sure.
When did you know you were gay, and what was it like coming out? I thought back to those difficult teenage years. I think I always knew on some level, but I really confronted it when I was 15. There was this guy in my English class, ironic, given what you teach, and I couldn't stop looking at him, couldn't stop thinking about him, and one day it just clicked that what I felt wasn't admiration or wanting to be his friend, it was attraction.
What did you do?
Panicked mostly. I grew up in a pretty conservative area. Being gay wasn't exactly celebrated, so I buried it for a while, tried to convince myself it was a phase, but it didn't go away. Finally came out to my parents when I was 17.
How did they react?
The memory still stung even after all these years. Not great, they weren't violent or anything, but there was a lot of disappointment. A lot of this isn't what we wanted for you. My dad didn't talk to me for 6 months. My mom tried to convince me to go to therapy to fix it. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly. It's okay, we have a relationship now, sort of. It's distant and polite, and we don't talk about my personal life, but it exists. Could be worse. I looked at him. What about your family? Do they know you're questioning? No, and I don't know if they will. My dad's this gruff, traditional guy, former military. My mom's sweet but conservative. They love me, I know that, but I don't know if they'd love this version of me. That's a heavy thing to carry alone. Yeah, he poked at the fire with a stick, sending up a small shower of sparks. It's part of why I haven't dealt with it until now. Easier to just not think about it, to date women occasionally and convince myself that's enough. But it's not, it's never been enough.
What changed?
He looked at me, and even in the dim light I could see the raw honesty in his expression. Meeting you, feeling something I've never let myself feel before, it made me realize I can't keep living half a life. My breath caught. Ethan. I know it's crazy, I know I barely know you, but sometimes you just know when something matters, when someone matters. I did know, because I felt it too, this pull toward him that defied logic, that made me want to throw caution to the wind and just see what happened. What do you want to do about it? I asked carefully. Honestly, I want to kiss you. I've wanted to kiss you since you made that camping virgin joke, and I realized you were funny and brave and not what I expected at all. He paused. But I also don't want to mess this up, don't want to rush something that feels important.
So what do we do?
I don't know, what do you want? It was a good question. What did I want? The safe thing would be to pull back, to maintain distance, to protect my heart from the inevitable complications of getting involved with someone who was just figuring himself out. But when had I ever really taken a risk? When had I ever let myself want something without immediately talking myself out of it? I want to see where this goes, I said quietly. But I need you to understand something. This isn't just about physical attraction for me. I don't do casual well. If we're doing this, I need to know you're serious, that you're not going to panic in a week and decide this was all a mistake. I can't promise I won't panic, Ethan said honestly. This is all new territory for me, but I can promise I won't run. I can promise I'll be honest with you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I studied his face, looking for any sign of hesitation or doubt. All I saw was determination and something that looked a lot like hope. Okay, I said, then let's see what happens.
Yes. Yeah.
Ethan smiled, that devastating smile I'd seen glimpses of, and reached across the space between us to take my hand. His palm was warm, calloused, steady. We sat there holding hands like teenagers, and it felt more intimate than anything I'd experienced in years. I should probably go to bed, I said eventually, though I made no move to stand. Probably, Ethan agreed, also not moving. Derek will wonder where I am. He's probably passed out already, he sleeps like the dead. I laughed softly. True. We sat there a few minutes longer, neither wanting to break the moment. Finally, I stood and Ethan stood with me. We were close, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Good night, Marcus, he said softly.
Good night, Ethan.
I turned to go, but his hand caught mine, pulling me back. Before I could ask what he was doing, he leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. It was chaste, almost innocent, but it sent electricity through my entire body. Sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all. I couldn't help myself. I touched my cheek where his lips had been, speechless. Then, gathering my courage, I leaned in and kissed his cheek in return, letting my lips linger just a moment longer than necessary. "Good night," I whispered again, and this time I made myself walk away before I did something crazy like kiss him properly. I crawled into the tent as quietly as possible, but Derek's voice emerged from the darkness. "You and Ethan seem to be getting along well." I froze. "You're awake." Hard to sleep when my best friend and my work friend are having what sounds like a pretty intense conversation outside. "Sorry, we didn't mean to keep you up." "I'm not complaining, just observing." There was a pause. "He's a good guy, Marcus, one of the best I know, but he's also complicated. He's been through some stuff." "What kind of stuff?" "That's his story to tell, not mine. I care about both of you, and I want you both to be happy. Just be careful, okay, with each other." It was such a Derek thing to say, protective and caring without being overbearing. "We will be." "Good." Another pause. "For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. I haven't seen him this alive in a long time." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just lay there in my sleeping bag, staring at the tent ceiling, my mind racing too fast for sleep. Morning came too early, announced by birdsong and the smell of someone making coffee. I stumbled out of the tent to find Mike already up, sitting by a freshly built fire with a cup in his hands. "Morning," he said with a small smile. "Coffee?"
Please.
He poured me a cup from the pot on the camp stove. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah, surprisingly well considering it was the ground." I sat down next to him. "You're up early." "I'm always up early, one of the joys of insomnia." He took a sip of his coffee. "Plus, this is my favorite time of day out here. Everything's quiet, peaceful." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Mike had always been the quietest of the group, content to observe rather than participate, but there was something calming about his presence. "So," he said eventually, "you and Ethan." My heart jumped. "What about us?" "I'm not blind, Marcus. I saw how you two were looking at each other yesterday, how you kept gravitating toward each other." He paused. "Does Derek know?" "There's nothing to know," I said carefully. "We're just getting to know each other." Mike gave me a look that suggested he didn't buy that for a second, but he didn't push. "Ethan's been my friend for a long time, and I've watched him struggle with things he won't talk about, things he keeps locked up tight." He looked at me directly. "I don't know what's happening between you two, and honestly, it's none of my business, but whatever it is, be patient with him, he's worth it." Before I could respond, Connor emerged from his tent, stretching and yawning. "Is that coffee I smell?" The moment passed, and soon everyone was up, including Ethan, who gave me a small, private smile that made my stomach flip. We made breakfast together, scrambled eggs and bacon cooked over the fire, and discussed plans for the day. "I'm thinking we could take it easy today," Derek suggested. "Maybe just hang around camp, swim in the lake, relax." Everyone agreed, and the day unfolded in a lazy, pleasant way. We swam, we read, we played cards. Connor tried to teach us some complicated strategy game he'd brought, but we all got bored halfway through and decided to just throw the frisbee around instead. Through it all, I was aware of Ethan. The way he moved, the sound of his laugh, the occasional glances he'd send my way when he thought no one was looking. And I was aware of my own feelings, growing stronger with each passing hour. In the afternoon, Ethan suggested we take a walk to gather firewood for the evening. I volunteered to help, ignoring the knowing look Derek shot me. We headed into the forest with a couple of bags, following a trail that led away from camp. Once we were out of sight and earshot, Ethan took my hand. "Hi," he said, a smile playing at his lips.
Hi yourself.
"I've been wanting to do that all day." "Hold my hand." "Yeah, among other things." My pulse quickened. "What other things?" Instead of answering, he pulled me closer, and suddenly we were standing chest to chest, his face inches from mine. "Is this okay?" he asked softly.
Very okay. Good.
And then he was kissing me. It wasn't the tentative, questioning kiss I might have expected from someone exploring their sexuality for the first time. It was confident and deep and absolutely electric. His hands came up to cup my face, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones as his lips moved against mine. I kissed him back with everything I had, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like coffee and something uniquely him, and I felt like I was drowning in the best possible way. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Ethan rested his forehead against mine.
Wow, he breathed. Yeah,
I've thought about kissing people before, but I've never felt like this. Like if I don't kiss you again right now, I might actually die. That's dramatic, I said, but I was smiling. I teach English literature, drama is kind of my thing. He kissed me again, softer this time, more exploratory. We stood there in the forest making out like teenagers, and it was perfect. Eventually, we forced ourselves to actually gather firewood, though we kept stopping to kiss in between. By the time we made it back to camp, my lips felt swollen and I knew I probably looked thoroughly kissed. Derek took one look at me and grinned. Find good firewood.
the best, I said, trying to keep a straight face.
Ethan ducked his head and I saw his cheeks were flushed. It was adorable. That evening, we had what Connor declared would be our feast night. He'd brought steaks to grill over the fire. And Mike had packed potatoes to bake in the coals. It was the best meal I'd had in recent memory, made better by the company and the setting. As the sun set and the stars began to emerge, Connor pulled out a bottle of good whiskey, not the cheap stuff from the night before, and we passed it around, each taking sips and telling stories. Okay, Connor said, clearly already a bit drunk. Most embarrassing college moment, go.
You first, Derek said.
Fine, sophomore year I got so drunk at a party that I ended up serenading a lamppost thinking it was this girl I had a crush on. Someone filmed it. It went viral on campus. We all laughed and Connor took a bow.
Mike, you're up, Derek said.
Mike considered. Junior year, I accidentally sent an email to my professor that was meant for my friend. It was not appropriate, had to have a very awkward conversation in office hours. More laughter, then it was Derek's turn. Spring break, senior year, we all went to Cancun. I got sunburned so badly that I had to sleep sitting up for 3 nights, and the pattern of the burn was in the exact shape of my tank top. I looked ridiculous. You looked like a lobster, Ethan interjected. A very sad, uncomfortable lobster.
Your turn then, Shakespeare, Connor said.
Ethan took a drink before speaking. Freshman year, first week of college, I was so nervous about making friends that I threw a party in my dorm room, invited like 50 people. 3 showed up. One of them was Derek, and he only came because he lived next door and heard music.
And I stayed because you had good taste in music and better taste in pizza, Derek added.
Thus began a beautiful friendship, Ethan said with a smile.
Marcus, your last, Connor said.
I thought about it. Senior year of college, I was doing a presentation on marketing strategies and my PowerPoint was full of what I thought were professional stock photos. Turns out one of them was not professional at all, very much not safe for work. My professor called me into his office after class. Oh my God, Derek said, eyes wide. What did you do? Died of embarrassment, basically. Then explained that I'd grabbed it from a free stock photo site and hadn't looked closely enough. He was cool about it, but I never lived it down in that class. We all laughed and the bottle made another round. The mood was light and easy, and for a moment I let myself just enjoy being part of this group, being included in their traditions. But then Connor, emboldened by whiskey, said something that changed everything. You know what? I'm glad Jake couldn't make it. No offense to him, but Marcus, you're better company, and it's been great having you here.
Thanks, man, I said.
Plus, it's cool to have different perspectives. Like I grew up pretty sheltered, you know, private school, suburban bubble. I didn't really know any gay people until college, and even then I was awkward about it at first. I tensed slightly, unsure where this was going. But my sister coming out, that changed things for me, made me realize how much it matters to just be accepting, to let people be who they are without judgment. That's really cool, Connor, I said sincerely. Yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is that you being here, being yourself, it's a good reminder that there's no one way to be a guy, you know, we don't all have to fit into the same box. I appreciated the sentiment, even if it was a bit clumsy. Thanks, that means a lot. Although I gotta say, Connor continued, and I saw Ethan tense beside me, I never would have guessed Ethan would be so cool with it. No offense, man, but you've always been kind of, I don't know, old-fashioned about some things. The silence that fell was sudden and heavy. Ethan's face had gone very still.
What's that supposed to mean? Derek asked carefully.
Just that Ethan's always been the most traditionally masculine of us, I guess. Sports, camping, all that. I guess I just assumed he'd be less comfortable with, gay stuff. Connor, that's a fucked up assumption, Mike said quietly. I didn't mean it like that, I just. Being traditionally masculine doesn't mean being homophobic, Derek said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. And Ethan's not some closed-minded asshole. I know, I'm sorry, I'm just drunk and saying things wrong. Connor looked genuinely distressed. Ethan, I didn't mean to offend you. You didn't offend me, Ethan said, but his voice was tight. You just reminded me of all the assumptions people make about who I am, about who I'm supposed to be. The tension was thick enough to cut. I wanted to reach out to Ethan to comfort him somehow, but I didn't know if that would make things better or worse. I think we've all had enough whiskey for tonight, Derek said diplomatically. Let's call it. Connor and Mike agreed quickly, both looking relieved for the excuse to escape. They headed to their tent, Connor still apologizing. Which left Derek, Ethan, and me around the fire. You okay? Derek asked Ethan. Fine, Ethan said shortly. You're not fine, I know you. Then why ask? Derek sighed, because I'm trying to give you the opportunity to talk about whatever's going on with you. You've been different this weekend, not bad different, just different. Ethan stared into the fire. I'm tired, Derek, tired of pretending, tired of fitting into boxes that don't fit, tired of being who everyone expects me to be. Then don't, Derek said simply, be whoever you want to be, we're your friends, we'll support you. I saw Ethan's jaw clench, saw him struggling with something internal. Will you? Because Connor's little speech just now, however well-intentioned, made it pretty clear that you all have ideas about who I am, and I'm not sure those ideas have room for the truth. The truth about what? Derek asked, and I could hear the concern in his voice. This was it, the moment. I held my breath, waiting to see what Ethan would do. He looked at Derek, then at me, then back at Derek. The truth about me, about who I am, about who I've always been but was too scared to admit. Derek waited, patient and steady. I'm not straight, Derek, I don't think I ever have been. The words hung in the air. Derek's expression went through several changes: surprise, processing, understanding. Okay, Derek said finally. Okay, that's it, just okay. What do you want me to say? That I'm shocked? I'm a little shocked, yeah, but mostly because you've been carrying this alone for so long, but it doesn't change anything about our friendship. You're still my best friend, you're still Ethan, you're just gay Ethan now. Bisexual, I think, Ethan corrected quietly. Okay, bisexual Ethan, the point stands. I watched Ethan's face crumple slightly with relief, watched him let out a breath he'd probably been holding for years. How long have you known? Derek asked gently. Forever, never, I don't know, it's complicated. Derek glanced at me, something clicking into place. Does this have anything to do with Marcus? Ethan and I exchanged looks. Marcus didn't make me question my sexuality, Ethan said, but he did make me finally face it, made me realize I couldn't keep hiding. Derek was quiet for a long moment, processing. Are you too? We're figuring it out, I said carefully. I'm not going to lie, this is a lot to take in, Derek admitted. Not the gay thing or bi thing, that's fine. It's more the fact that my best friend and my work friend are apparently into each other and I had no idea until just now. We didn't want to complicate things, I said. Too late for that, Derek said, but there was no anger in his voice, just weary affection. Look, I need to sleep on this, process it, but Ethan, I'm glad you told me, and Marcus, take care of him, okay? He's more fragile than he looks. I'm sitting right here, Ethan protested. I know, and I love you, man, this doesn't change that. Derek stood. I'm going to bed, you too. Do whatever, just don't make it weird when we all have to share a car tomorrow. He headed to the tent, leaving Ethan and me alone. Well, I said after a moment, that went better than it could have. Yeah, Ethan looked drained, like the confession had taken everything out of him. One down, approximately everyone else I know to go. You don't have to tell everyone right away, you can take your time. I know, but I don't want to take my time, I've wasted enough time already. He looked at me. I don't want to hide this, hide us, whatever we are. We don't have to figure out what we are tonight. I know, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About you, I'm not going to panic and run, I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. I moved closer, taking his hand. I believe you. Good, he squeezed my hand. I should probably go tell Connor and Mike before we leave tomorrow, rip the bandage off. You don't have to do it all at once. Maybe not, but I want to. For the first time in my life, I want people to know who I really am. We sat there holding hands, looking up at the stars, and I felt something shift in my chest. This wasn't just attraction or physical chemistry. This was something deeper, something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. Stay with me tonight, Ethan said suddenly, not for sex or anything, I don't want to be alone tonight.
Derek.
Derek's already asleep and he basically gave us his blessing, please. How could I say no to that? Okay. We made our way to his tent, leaving the fire to die on its own. His sleeping bag was barely big enough for one person, let alone two, but we made it work, lying facing each other in the cramped space. Hi, he whispered.
Hi.
Thank you for being here, for being patient with me. Thank you for trusting me. He kissed me softly, sweetly, and we fell asleep like that, tangled together in the darkness, the forest breathing around us. I woke to sunlight filtering through the tent and the sound of voices outside. For a moment I was disoriented, then I remembered I was in Ethan's tent, wrapped around him like a vine. He was already awake, watching me with soft eyes. Morning, he murmured. Morning, how long have you been awake? A while. I've been watching you sleep, is that creepy? A little, I admitted, but I'll allow it. He smiled, then kissed me gently. We should probably go face the music. Outside, Connor, Mike, and Derek were already packing up camp. They all looked up as Ethan and I emerged from his tent together, and there was a moment of awkward silence. So Connor said finally, Derek caught us up. My stomach dropped. I looked at Ethan, who had gone still beside me. And Ethan asked, his voice carefully neutral. And you're still Ethan, Mike said quietly, our friend that hasn't changed. Connor nodded vigorously. I feel like such an idiot about what I said last night, about you being traditionally masculine and all that bullshit. I'm really sorry, man. It's okay, Ethan said, though I could hear the tension in his voice. You didn't know. I should have known better than to make assumptions, Connor insisted. And for the record, I think it's cool, brave actually. Yeah, Mike added, it takes guts to be honest about who you are. I watched Ethan absorb this, saw the relief wash over his face. His friends, his brothers, really were accepting him. It was beautiful to witness. Thanks, guys, Ethan said, and his voice was rough with emotion. That means a lot. Of course, man, Derek said, clapping him on the shoulder. Now let's finish packing up so we can get home. I'm craving real food and a shower. We all laughed, and the tension broke. We spent the next hour breaking down camp, working together in the easy rhythm of people who'd done this many times before. As we worked, Connor kept making terrible jokes about camping puns, and Mike provided dry commentary, and Derek orchestrated the whole thing like the natural leader he was. And Ethan looked lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Before we left, we all stood at the edge of the clearing, looking back at the campsite one last time. Same time next year, Connor asked. Absolutely, Derek said. Marcus, you're coming back too, right? Mike asked. I looked at Ethan, who was looking back at me with hope in his eyes. Yeah, I said, I think I am. The drive back was quieter than the drive up had been. Derek drove, Ethan sat in the passenger seat, and I was in the cramped back seat with most of the gear. We'd said goodbye to Connor and Mike at the trailhead with promises to get together soon. So, Derek said after about an hour of driving, we should probably talk about this. About what? Ethan asked. About the fact that my best friend and my work friend are apparently dating now. That's going to be weird, right? We're not dating, I said quickly, we're just figuring things out, Ethan finished, like we said. Right, figuring things out. Derek was quiet for a moment. Look, I'm happy for both of you, really, but I also work with Marcus, and Ethan, you're my best friend. If this goes south, I'm going to be stuck in the middle. It's not going to go south, Ethan said. You don't know that? Relationships are complicated, new relationships especially. And Ethan, you're just coming out, there's going to be a lot of stuff you need to work through. I know that, Ethan said, a note of defensiveness creeping into his voice. I'm not a child. I didn't say you were, I'm just saying, be careful, both of you, think about what you're doing. I understood where Derek was coming from. He was trying to protect both of us, protect himself from being caught in the middle if things fell apart, but it still stung a little. We will be careful, I said, we're not rushing into anything. Derek sighed, okay, good, that's all I ask. The conversation moved on to other things, work, upcoming plans, whether Die Hard was really a Christmas movie, still no consensus. But I could feel the tension underlying everything, the awareness that we'd shifted something fundamental in the dynamic between the three of us. When we finally reached the city, Derek dropped Ethan off first. As Ethan grabbed his gear from the truck, I got out too, ostensibly to help but really to say goodbye properly. So, I said as we stood on the sidewalk. So, he echoed. What happens now? I'd like to see you again, soon, maybe dinner this week. Like a date. He smiled, yeah, like a date. Okay, I'd like that. He glanced at the truck where Derek was pointedly looking at his phone, giving us privacy. Then Ethan leaned in and kissed me, quick but sweet, right there in public. I'll call you, he said. You better. I watched him head into his apartment building, then climbed back into the truck. Derek waited until we'd pulled away before speaking. He really likes you, you know. I really like him too. I can tell. Derek was quiet for a moment. Just take care of each other, okay? Both of you are important to me. We will, I promised. When Derek dropped me off at my apartment, I felt both exhausted and energized. The camping trip had been so much more than I'd expected. It had opened up possibilities I hadn't even known existed. I showered, changed into clean clothes, and was contemplating ordering food when my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Thank you for this weekend, for being patient with me, for making me feel like it was safe to be honest. I can't wait to see you again. I stared at the message, warmth spreading through my chest, then I typed back. Thank you for trusting me, for taking that leap. I can't wait either. His response came quickly, how's Tuesday for dinner? Tuesday's perfect. I set my phone down and looked around my apartment, the same apartment I'd felt so lonely in just a few days ago. It looked different now somehow, everything looked different. Tuesday came both too slowly and too quickly. I changed my outfit 3 times, settled on something casual but nice, then changed again. By the time Ethan was supposed to pick me up, I was a nervous wreck. The knock on my door came at exactly 7. I took a deep breath and opened it. Ethan stood there in dark jeans and a button-down shirt, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. He looked nervous too, which somehow made me feel better. Hi, he said. Hi, you look great. So do you, he paused, I brought you something. He handed me a small book, a collection of Ocean Vuong's poetry. I thought you might like it, he said, since you seemed interested when I was reading from it at camp. I was touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Thank you, this is perfect. Ready to go. We drove to a small Italian restaurant in a quiet neighborhood, not too fancy but nice enough to feel special. Ethan had made a reservation and they led us to a corner table that felt private. Is this okay? He asked as we sat down. I wasn't sure if you preferred somewhere more upscale or... Ethan, I interrupted gently, this is perfect, stop worrying. He laughed nervously. Sorry, I've never done this before, a real first date with a guy. I want it to be good. It's already good, you're here, I'm here, everything else is just details. We ordered wine and food, and as the evening progressed, I watched Ethan slowly relax. We talked about everything, books, movies, childhood memories, dreams for the future. He told me about teaching, about the kids who struggled and the ones who thrived, about why he loved literature. There's something about stories, he said, his eyes lighting up the way they did when he was passionate about something. They help us make sense of our own lives, they show us we're not alone in what we feel. Is that why you became a teacher, to share that with other people? Partly. But also because I had teachers who did that for me, who saw me when I felt invisible. I wanted to be that for someone else. That's beautiful. He ducked his head, looking embarrassed but pleased. What about you? Why marketing? I considered the question. Honestly, I kind of fell into it. If this story touched your heart, show your support by liking this video. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support keeps these stories alive, thank you.